was on everybody's minds since the release of the report last week. We've had, the lunatic fringe, the Democratic left, demanding the unredacted report, the impeachment of Donald Trump. They can't get over it. How you doing, Larry? It's good to see you.
Well, doing okay. Jason, it's just exactly what I tried to warn people would. It's happened just the way I tried to warn people. It's as though the Mueller report didn't say anything, or if it said anything, it convicted him. I mean, the media and the Democrats have just gone on like nothing's happened. Now, what is interesting is, just like I promised you, Jason, Mueller, with that team of professional hitmen that he had, the second half of the report was written strictly for the Democrats to use in an impeachment process.
Right.
I mean, it's a trap.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it's ever been.
Other people have been saying that as well.
Well, one thing that I don't hear anybody asking, Jason, it has taken them $30 million thereabouts to do this investigation, right? When did Robert Mueller know that there was no collusion? When was he able to conclude that there was no collusion? Now, I'm going to tell you, not even having been with him, not working with him, probably a year to maybe a year and a half ago, they had totally resolved there was no collusion. They had to have had. They had to have been able to do it by then.
This is always the classic question, right, Larry? What did he know and when did he know it? I mean, that was coined during Watergate, of course, but they've been bringing it up so many times. They've tried to make this like Watergate, but it really is unlike anything we've seen before in that the dossier and all of the, quote unquote evidence that was used, first of all, to empower Robert Mueller by Rod Rosenstein, that was fake. The conclusions that he's come to, there was all that stuff in the report, Larry, about Russia hacking, but we have professional witnesses like Bill Binney who say that they didn't hack. How can he come to these conclusions?
Well, right. But my point about a year and a half ago, Mueller spent $15 million of taxpayer money. It cost $30 million over half of the period of time ago. He had to have been able to resolve the issue of collusion, but he didn't. He kept it running up until now. So there goes $15 million. $15 million of taxpayer money. And what did he spend the last year and a half doing?
Yeah.
And that's where that second half of the report comes in.
What did he do with all the money is another good question.
Right. But it was simply to destroy Donald Trump. This is an extension, Jason, of the coup.
Right.
It's not over. It's not over at all. And then, of course, now, last week, the whole big deal, was the redactions. Well, let me tell you professionally, Barr probably redacted less than anybody could have figured he would do. I mean, he made it a fairly transparent document. The only things that are left that are redacted are things that are required by law to be redacted. It's not a judgment call on Barr's side.
Right.
Grand jury testimony, grand jury stuff has to be redacted by law. And then there are a few places where he has redacted because by law issues were under investigation under another investigation, therefore they're sealed until the investigation's over, the other investigations. And where it exposes sources and methods to our national security.
Yeah.
And all of that is required by law. So
Larry,
the Democrats jumping up and down,
yeah,
wanting Barr to be fired or firing him or claiming he was a lackey for Trump, that's BS.
yeah. He did do a good job, I think, of, abiding by the law. It's very, I mean, we've spoken about it many times. Morons like Adam Schiff seem to think that they can just, put together some kind of House vote to get them to release this stuff.
Right.
There are strict guidelines that dictate the rules under which a special counsel appointment can operate. It's supposed to be a confidential, kind of, it's not like he's working with the Attorney General. It's because the Attorney General is supposed to be the head lawyer for the United States, and when you get into a matter where there's an inherent conflict of interest when you're investigating the President of the United States, that's why we have the special counsel. It's kind of unprecedented for him to say, oh, well, we couldn't decide, so give it over to Congress. That's not what he's supposed to do.
No, as a matter of fact, Mueller is required to turn his investigation over to Barr, Attorney General Barr. And then Attorney General Barr is supposed to take what he recommends. If it is prosecution, then he prosecutes the case. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing people don't realize, Jason. Barr is not obligated by any rule of law or any reason. He's not obligated to turn that report over to a soul.
Mm-hmm. Confidential,
He doesn't
right?
have to turn it over to Congress. Right. He doesn't have to turn it over to Congress. He didn't have to make it public for the people to see. Mm-hmm. He could have kept it to himself, issued his summary judgment, and that's it.
Right.
That's all he's required to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then there's another thing there's one other thing that we've got to get out in the open.
Sure.
And it all deals with the second half of the report having to do with obstruction of justice.
Right.
Mueller said he could not find evidence sufficient enough to prosecute. Evidence beyond any reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. But then he made up, Jason, a standard of law that does not exist. His standard that he used was he could not prove Trump innocent.
Yeah, couldn't exonerate him, he said. Right.
Right. Well, that's not possible anyway.
Yeah, there's nothing that's ever spoken about. Yeah.
Right. Now, what Barr did, which I might object to, I don't know, but it's done, so it doesn't matter, and we don't get a vote. Barr even said that he and Rosenstein decided to use the standard that Mueller had set, which was they couldn't prove him innocent, and they went with it.
It's crazy.
But that was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely insane. But he had to do that. This is the little sleight of hand, Jason. People wonder, well, why did Mueller come up with that reasoning?
Yeah.
You see, Jason, it's because he was going to try to exonerate Trump that allowed him to put in all the all of the cussing and ranting and raving and all of the things that make Trump look bad in that report. You see, had he have stopped when he couldn't find him guilty, when he couldn't find evidence enough to prosecute, then none of that stuff would have been brought into play, and the Democrats wouldn't have any weapons to use towards impeachment.
Right. So they basically just wanted to, this was an exercise in how to make Trump look bad.
Yes, and it's an exercise of how the Democrats, the progressives, the socialists have been very effective at weaponizing law. And by the way,
it's not even law.
weaponizing the
They're
legal
just making
system.
stuff up.
Right. This is standard operating procedure in a socialist or communist country. In a socialist or communist country, if the government decides they want to put you in prison or kill you legally, they just twiddle with the laws randomly to make it fit. That's what he did right here.
I'm glad you're saying this, Larry. You're the first person to articulate it like this, and you're so right. It's like improvisational law. They're just doing sort of whatever the hell they want.
Right. It's knowing the conclusion you want and then bending the law with just a few words to make it fit the conclusion. But this is done every day in a communist or socialist country. Every day it's done. We're just not used to it here.
Do you know, I'm sure you're aware of him, but do you know Ray McGovern?
I do not.
Ray McGovern basically one time stood up at some meeting and asked Robert Mueller about this concept of parallel construction. And what he was talking about was all this NSA spying, where the NSA gets information on people and then they can basically, you know, go after you and try to find, you know, they know something that they're not legally supposed to know, and then they can, you know, go kind of fill in the evidence to make it something they can prosecute you for. Like if the NSA taps your computer and finds some email that you've sent that they say, oh, Larry's guilty of something, but they can't submit that as evidence, you know, this parallel construction allows them to do it. And I don't have the video queued up, but Ray McGovern asks Robert Mueller what he thinks about parallel construction, and he says it's totally okay. But it's absolutely abusive, unconstitutional, you know, using all this NSA illegally obtained spying information in the same way that they spied on candidate Trump and then Donald Trump and invaded the rights of people like Jerome Corsi. And it seems like they're doing parallel construction to impeach the president.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's well put, well said the way he did, because that's what, it's the chain of custody. You see, in evidence, what is significant in evidence oftentimes is the chain of custody. So if the FBI is trying to prosecute you and they have evidence that they obtained illegally, then obviously, you know, they can't use it, right? I mean, it can't be used to prosecute you.
It's just eliminated from the case.
That's right.
As if there was no evidence.
Right, exactly. It doesn't, yeah, you can't recognize it and say we can't use it. You can't even recognize it in the court. But what they're able to do by what you're talking about, I've never heard it quite called that, but what they do is they just dummy up a narrative in a chain of custody that somehow gets them that information, quote unquote, legally.
Right, exactly. So this was all a chess game to move Donald Trump in position to be impeached, and they just didn't know how they were going to get there exactly. They just knew they wanted to get there. Let me bring you to another component of the Mueller report, and that was some of the things about Dr. Jerome Corsi. Many people have said that Dr. Corsi has been one of the most significant figures in this entire thing, because just a few months ago, it looked like Dr. Corsi might be indicted. They had him questioned for 40 hours. He's a man, 72 years of age. He's spoken to us on this program about the physical, mental, and emotional stress he was put under during the questioning. And it seems quite clear that they wanted to get the doctor to make a plea arrangement whereby he would plead guilty to something that he did not do, and then they would use that confession is what it would become. I mean, this speaks to exactly what we're talking about, Larry. This is how you build that chain of custody of evidence. You manufacture evidence. If you can convince Jerome Corsi to admit that he did something whether he did it or not, it becomes a legal confession in court. If you get Corsi to say, yeah, I told Roger Stone to call WikiLeaks, and then you put pressure on Roger Stone and get Roger Stone to say, yeah, Donald Trump, I gave him WikiLeaks information, now you can use that testimony to prosecute the president. Isn't that the plan they had?
Absolutely. You bet. And you can also see the signature of his legal team, Mueller's legal team, in the way when they weren't getting what they needed, they would go to Dr. Corsi, they would go to all these other characters, Cohen, etc., the whole cast.
Right.
And they would literally find something. With Flynn, you just got to find something.
Right.
And the minute they find something on one of those people, then they use that to force them to tell them something that they want said for the case.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Dr. Corsi would not adhere to that. Most people in his shoes, I assure you, when you're facing the full weight and power of the federal government coming down on you,
Yeah.
it's hard to stand on principle. It truly, truly is when you're alone.
Yeah.
I know that feeling well. But he did.
Yeah.
But then you end up with somebody like Cohen.
Right.
Now, Cohen was such a slippery creep that when they were able to pinch him, even the judge recognized that he wasn't, the judge, I can't remember his comment, but he couldn't tell for sure that Cohen wasn't making stuff up. Was he was he inventing things to fit
It
the
certainly
script
seemed
that
like
Mueller
there
wanted?
was. Yeah.
Yes. But that's this cast of legal prosecutor hitmen that Mueller had. This is their signature, Jason. This is how they work. And then look at how Mueller, even in his report, which I can't even believe he did this, he basically said in conclusion to the report that although he found nothing, I'm paraphrasing, although he found nothing, that it should be adjudicated through some other court.
Right.
Meaning Congress.
Right.
Meaning impeachment.
Yeah. Really unheard of. Is basically saying, well, I spent all that money, couldn't do the job properly. Why don't you guys do something with this?
Right. And and then he's saying, and look what I gave you. I gave you the prima facie evidence you need to go forward with impeachment. Because remember, in impeachment, it's not dealing with crimes under law. People get confused about that. Impeachment, when you get in an impeachment hearing, to be honest, it's up to the members of the House of Representatives. If they want to claim that whatever they're charging Trump with, or whatever they come up with, whether that would be sufficient reason or enough to impeach him. It doesn't have anything to do with the standards of law. They don't have to meet the requirements of a court. And people don't think about that, but it's a set-up rig, buddy. All you got to have for impeachment is a majority control of the House.
It's a terrible precedent, Larry, because what it does is it just opens the door to any time there's a president that is disliked for whatever reason, this sets a standard by which he can be, this is obstruction of presidency on behalf of Congress, Adam Schiff, Gerald Nadler, Robert Mueller. All these guys are guilty of preventing the president from doing what we want him to do and what we elected him to do by, you're describing it in great detail, how these guys are not adhering to law, not adhering to the mandate of the special counsel's office, not adhering to the Constitution. They're just hell-bent on impeaching Donald Trump and doing whatever they can, finding whatever they can to make that happen.
That's right. And all Mueller had to do was give Nadler and what's his name?
Schiff.
Schiff. Enough prima facie, just enough to reasonably account for an impeachment process. And an impeachment process is the same thing as a grand jury. Not only is it the same as a grand jury as far as how it operates, it comes up with its finding, then it's turned over to a court. Well, the impeachment goes through the House and then it's turned over to the Senate. Mm-hmm. But you do know in a grand jury, there's an old saying, you can indict a ham sandwich with a grand jury, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can't impeach a ham sandwich in impeachment in the House if you simply have control of the House. It doesn't matter. You can just make up any reason on earth that you want to claim he needs to be put out of office. Any reason. He played tiddlywinks on last Tuesday.
Right.
As long as the vote is controlled by the majority of the number of votes in the House, he therefore will be impeached.
But let's clarify, Larry, because let's say they do, they impeach him ham sandwich style. They don't like his haircut. They don't like the fact that he cursed a lot. They don't like the fact that his son met with a Russian lawyer and didn't do anything illegal. So they impeach him.
Right.
But then Bill Clinton got impeached and nothing seemed to happen, right? Getting impeached and getting actually removed from office are two definitely distinct things. What happened that allowed Bill Clinton to be impeached and not kicked out? And what would be the circumstances if Trump got impeached for something that wasn't a crime? You were very closely following and even involved with the Clinton impeachment, right?
I was there with the attorney, and in the impeachment, my mind's just gone blank. I can't remember the name of the attorney that represented. Anyway, Clinton. What happened? We were in the cloakroom. No. The famous lawyer from Chicago. My God. Wrote a book after it was over. Anyway, we were in the cloakroom, and we had him out of office in the Senate trial. We had the votes. And then Bob Dole came in the cloakroom, threw his briefcase on the desk, and said, he's walking. And we said, no, he's not. He said, oh, yeah, he is. He's walking. Well, when the vote came down, who was the senator from Pennsylvania? My God, you talk about that going blank. He was in on the Kennedy assassination Warren report.
Senator from Pennsylvania. I don't know. Let me look it up.
Yeah. My God, I can't believe I've gone blank. When you look it up, he and I...
Arlen Specter.
Arlen Specter, God. When it came down to voting time, Arlen Specter abstained. And when he abstained, that threw the vote into a tie. And when it went to a tie, then Al Gore, Vice President, got to cast his vote. And of course, he cast his vote to let him loose. And that's how Clinton got off. And then Arlen Specter's wife, 2 months later, or 6 months later, got a job, got an appointment to the National Parks and Tourism Commission at a couple $100,000 a year. That's how Clinton walked, right there. Arlen Specter stabbed us in the back.
Wow. And so Arlen Specter,
This time,
he was a Republican, or what?
Yes, he was Republican. And Arlen Specter goes all the way back to the Kennedy assassination. He was part of the investigation into the magic bullet. He's one of the ones that said that bullet made a turn in midair.
Exactly. Well, there's also a picture right here of him shaking hands with Martin Luther King, which I wonder if that's kind of, I don't know. So this guy's been around.
What's going to happen? Yeah, what's going to happen with Trump is this. They're going to time the impeachment process to be going on during the campaign, with the hopes that if they can't defeat Trump in 2020, they will at least get enough seats in the Senate to be able to get control of it. If they get control of the Senate, Trump's toast even if he wins. Likely is not what will happen if President Trump loses the 2020 election. Since there are 21 Republican senators running for re-election, odds are if Trump loses his presidential campaign, you can see that the Senate will flip also. There's no way people are going to walk in and vote to throw Trump out, but then vote to keep a Republican in the Senate. It just won't happen like that.
Right. Larry,
the race in 2020 is critical.
Was it Emmett Flood, the lawyer for Clinton?
No. It'll come to me here in a minute. I'm sorry.
It's hard to find. I'm searching around here. Anyway.
He wrote a book about it.
Well, okay. So let me ask you some questions about Kenneth Starr, because you had dealt with him quite a bit throughout the process of providing evidence and things like that. So talk to us a little bit about how Kenneth Starr's investigation and the report that he ultimately issued, how did that differ from what's going on here with Robert Mueller?
Well, he was a special prosecutor. Mueller is a special counsel. Kenneth Starr had broader purview, I guess is the best way to say it, than Mueller. That's how Kenneth Starr could be looking into something and then get into something else, left and right. I mean, he could literally undertake any investigation in any area he wanted to. That was the special prosecutor's power. They did away with that after the whole Clinton ordeal. They stopped that from ever happening again. Now you have a special counsel. And this is what's weird about Mueller. The whole purpose of a special counsel is you are given a specific area to investigate. And you cannot broaden it. You have limits. And yet he goes in and he's doing all of these spin-off investigations, which is outside of his purview.
Right.
But just like a good criminal prosecutor can do, he was able just to connect them to Trump in any way, like with Cohen or Corsi or anybody that touched Trump. He claimed that gave him permission under his purview to deal with them. And that's why they got all of these other indictments and convictions and pleas. But that's the difference between a special prosecutor and a special counsel. A special prosecutor has broad powers. They can go anywhere.
So Robert Mueller basically did exactly what they had changed the law to prevent happening.
Yeah, he did it anyway. All he did was just kind of like we were talking about the chain of custody. All he had to do was just show that somebody had some connection to Trump, and then they could go and investigate them for any crime they may have committed anytime, any place, anywhere.
Like Manafort.
Yep.
And they really put these guys through the ringer. I mean, it's the thing that's really kind of disturbing, Larry. There's so many people who dislike President Trump, and therefore they just don't care. I mean, irrespective of, I don't know really anything about Paul Manafort other than what's been in the news, but he's just another guy out there. He has every right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. I don't think anybody would really like it if people started kicking in doors and taking them and sticking them in solitary confinement while they were awaiting trial. I think about people like the Bundys and even people we've had on the show. Well, the Bundys have been on the show, of course, but I mean, there's a lot of people who seem to be not getting justice, and it's getting worse, and we've got all these cheerleaders who love MSNBC and they love CNN and even a little bit Fox News now. It's just everybody seems to be getting on board for just destroying everybody's constitutional rights as long as it ends Donald Trump.
Absolutely. You know, I got so mad last week. After the Mueller report came out, I forced myself to watch CNN and MSNBC. Yeah. Just so I could verify the coverage. And I saw these reporters, these anchors, these hosts literally saying, this report just confirms how right we've been all along.
That's crazy.
And, you know, come on, Jason. I mean, but they said it. And just think, and then what I was forced to think about the culture of the viewers of those programs.
Right. They just believe what they hear.
Right. They have no way of knowing that they weren't. As far as they're concerned, if they say, golly, this report confirms everything we've been saying all along, guess what? Yeah. Okay, then they were right all the way along.
Well, because most people aren't even going to read the report, of course.
No. And they're not going to see alternative programming. Right. You know, they're not going to see, for example, Fox and what Fox is saying. They're not going to see that.
Right.
And that's the culture we live in. That's what's so dangerous about us today, about our society. We're so cubbyhole now. You know, you go and hear what you want to hear, and you go to places that tell what you want to hear. And then I'll go to where I want to hear and tells me the kind of stuff I want to hear the way I want to hear it.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody last night who said that, you know, they don't like Donald Trump as president because he's totally amoral. And I said, well, you know, what do you think about Bill Clinton, like raping women and biting them on the lip? And they like literally covered their ears and didn't want to hear it. And I was like, well, all right. I mean, that's a good way to keep your mind open, to not listen to facts. I mean, you know, it's a strange thing to say. But you're right, Larry. Most people are not listening to alternative information sources. Most people aren't listening to our show here. I want to remind people who are listening to the show to go over to Larry's webpage, nicholslive.com. You can support Larry financially by clicking on the donate button and sending him some money through PayPal. You get his PayPal address right there, nicholslive@aol.com. You can also send cash to Larry through the mail in Conway, Arkansas. He's got his address right on there. And we couldn't do these shows without Larry, so I hope that people will go and support him there. I love getting your firsthand insights into these types of things, Larry. Let me take you back to the report for just a second, because it's amazing how much attention this Russia investigation has given to WikiLeaks. I mean, as we've been saying, this is totally unrelated stuff, but they're trying to, you know, build a bridge from here to there. They come to all these conclusions about the Russian government working with WikiLeaks. What do you think about the coincidental timing of the release of this Robert Mueller report and the capture of Julian Assange? He's been holed up in that Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. I mean, he was a pretty easy guy to find. He's just sitting there, but yet, just as the Robert Mueller investigation concludes and the report is issued, they grab him and stick him in a jail.
You know, Jason, I've been asked several times, what do I think about Julian Assange? And my answer is, I don't know. On one hand, I don't like the fact that he was able to hack into some of our most sensitive secrets, because that's dangerous.
Well, but we don't know that he hacked, Larry. I don't think Julian Assange has claimed to hack. He just receives information from people and publishes it.
Right.
They've accused him of hacking.
Anyway, he's getting, right, well, supposedly he gets that kind of information whatever way. So that's one side of it. But then on the other side of it, had it not been for him,
All right.
Hillary would be president today
Right.
to a great extent. So he's a hero on that side. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just the paradox in everybody, a little good, a little bad, and everything any of us do. I don't know. But instead of the second half of the report and 15 million at least of the money spent for the Mueller investigation, instead of it going to trying to set the stage for Trump to be impeached, it sure would have been beneficial to have spent at least that second half trying to delve into how the Russians did hack into all this stuff. I mean, you'll notice there still has not been a major investigation into how they were doing it.
Well, the FBI hasn't even looked. The FBI hasn't even looked at the server that got hacked. They outsourced it to CrowdStrike, which is a private company
Right.
owned by former FBI agent Sean Henry and a Russian expatriate who's pretty anti-Russian member of the Atlantic Council named Dmitry Alperovich. I mean, isn't that unprecedented for such a significant piece of
Yes.
evidence to be handed over to a private company?
Absolutely. And if Mueller was investigating collusion by the Russians, what I can't even begin to fathom, you had the Ukrainian prosecutors offering evidence about the Clinton campaign colluding with the Russians. I mean, they had actual evidence that they were trying to give to Mueller, but he wouldn't take it.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want any actual evidence.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if he was looking into collusion, he had to. I mean, if he's paid to look into collusion with the Russians, of course, part of it would be attached to Trump, but collusion with the Russians, as it attached to anybody, he was supposed would have been under his purview to investigate. But in that case, he wouldn't even touch it.
Right.
He would not let them send it to him. And these guys were begging. They even went to the media to say they were trying to turn it over to him. These were Ukrainian officials, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, the Mueller report went as far as saying that, you know, basically coming to conclusions essentially about Assange being a Russian agent, but again, not really providing evidence of that. Certainly not providing evidence of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, and that's the sad trick that's becoming more and more popular. Just the accusation.
Right.
Just the accusation makes you guilty. And when you've got a complicit media that is willing to take any accusation and just broadcast it as though it were fact, guess what? You become guilty.
Larry, do you
I promise you this. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Well, I promise you this. If you walk out of your house and just go up and down your street, and everybody you see, you ask them, number one, do they like Trump? Probably half may say they do, half may say they don't, depending on your neighborhood.
Right.
But then the ones that don't like him, if you ask them, do you think he's committed treason, they'll say yes.
Right.
And then if you try to reason and say, but you know, there was this thing called the Mueller report that said he wasn't, they'll just say they don't believe it.
Right.
It was rigged.
So, Larry, do you think that that's more to do with the unhinged media being controlled by, you know, globalist, billionaire leftists, or is this more to do with social media?
No, that's, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, my accusation is that they're a part of this global power trying to take America, turn America into a socialist country. They're a part of it. They're an instrument of it.
Yeah. I
The
agree.
social media part is just where something grew up that they didn't plan on, and now they're just doing whatever they've got to do with dirty tricks, misinformation, et cetera, to destroy it. But the mainstream media is an absolute instrument of the coup.
Yeah, well planned, thought out for a long time. I was speaking the other day, Larry, to somebody who works in like internet advertising, Google, and the guys worked at Facebook and stuff like that. And I was asking him, I said, how, from an advertising standpoint, when we've got all these social media platforms that make it so easy for people to create these false accounts, how do we know if Facebook has 1 billion users or 200 million users where 100 million of them have 10 accounts each? And if I'm an advertiser paying to reach a certain number of people, with traditional television or a newspaper, they would say, well, okay, this many newspapers got sold, so that many people are reading it, and here's how much an ad costs. But if they allow all these fake accounts to artificially inflate the number of users, they're kind of ripping off people who are advertising on these platforms, aren't they?
You bet. You bet they are.
So we really do need some regulation in there. It takes me back to this Devin Nunes lawsuit against Twitter. He's kind of coming at it from the totally wrong angle. There's a lot of ways these social media companies could be dealt with new legislation and updating legislation, just banging on them with the same, defamation or whatever he's trying to hit them with that they're already protected from. It makes no sense.
Well, and what makes it really scary now is I agree with you. The internet, social media, is a relatively new industry, all right? It's new. Much had to be learned and is being learned about how it works, what the benefits are, what the bad things are. So definitely now consideration should be being sought through Congress to try to, get it in line somehow. But the problem is, Jason, Congress is absolutely not the place you want to go now, because if the Democrats are in control, then the type of legislation that would be needed to rectify some of the problems on the internet, social media, is going to be twisted. It's going to be slanted towards the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much so the Republicans, but you have to face the same problem with the Republicans. We're so polarized that our Congress can't do anything now. That I find it hard to believe there's any issue that our Congress, both the House and the Senate, could sit down as men and women and legitimately deal with in the interest of the American people, over and above that of their political parties or their personal power.
Right. It seems like Congress it's mostly being used now, Larry, for just generating funny quips and little video clips that they can put on YouTube with Ocasio-Cortez yelling at somebody, or Nadler. Nadler was made to look like a fool by Candace Owens. I don't know if you saw that a week or two ago, where he told her he told her not to call Ted Lieu stupid, but she hadn't, and so Nadler was dressing her down for something that she didn't even do. Larry, when people go to nicholslive.com, do you have any new scripts on there for people to look at to call their Congress people?
No, it's not time yet. But we're getting close. Those scripts will become very important, because as we move forward, the situation now is that Trump has to amass a counterattack. He's got to. It's obvious now that the Democrats are going to stay the course, which I had been trying to forewarn them was going to happen since long before the Mueller report came out, that nothing's going to change. He has got to take the Mueller report, the fact that he was absolved of any collusion, and, the simple truth is, on obstruction of justice, not guilty. If he were guilty, they would have prosecuted him.
Yeah.
But the way they twisted the law around, it sounds like, well, we can't say he's not guilty because we can't prove he's innocent. Wait a minute, that's nuts.
This is not the way it
So
works.
he's innocent on, right, he's innocent on both accounts. Now they must orchestrate a counteroffensive and come at him hard. If he doesn't, it's going to be a hell of a time until November of 2020. He'll be on the receiving end of everything that happens. You know, to show you how far afield the Republicans are, Mitch McConnell last week came up with introducing legislation. Now, this is a piece of legislation Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans are introducing, and I couldn't believe it. It's to make the smoking age 21. You know, now that's a big one. That's going to help this country. That's going to fix the deteriorating infrastructure. That's going to fix the problem on the border. That is so worthless.
Well, we might disagree on that.
It doesn't even get you brownie points.
We may disagree on that, Larry. I know you're a fan of smoking, but I agree this is not the most important thing for Mitch McConnell to be doing.
Right.
But I think it's possible that could have long-term benefits to the United States, particularly when they're talking about, single-payer health care. If people are less inclined to become addicted to cigarettes at a young age, maybe it'll reduce the number of people smoking and kind of have a positive impact on
I agree
health.
I agree to all of that, but I'm speaking purely in the sense of getting out front with some motivating legislation. To try and get the public's attention on trying to administer laws, to do what Congress is supposed to be doing. That's not a bell ringer.
Right.
Now, it's probably a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. I'm just saying you got to be kidding me.
If we're
That's what you're going to wake America up with?
Right. If we're going to triage legislation, that's not the most important one. It's probably put it in the pile of good things, but we need other stuff before that. Well, I mean, but think about it. This is an interesting topic that you've brought up, because he does that, and a certain pretty large segment of the population, maybe parents with young children, people who are interested in health, people who want government-sponsored health care in some way, will get behind this bill, and it makes McConnell look good for doing something. I mean, it's better than a bill to, kill babies or some of these other things that they're coming out with.
Right.
So it gets him, as you said, brownie points for McConnell.
If it works that way, yes, you're right, but it don't work that way. What you have to do with legislation, when you're trying to initiate an agenda, when you're trying to build momentum, you don't want to pick an issue that if you ask 1,000 Americans to list the number of things they feel are important, and that one don't even hit anybody's list out of 1,000.
Right.
That ain't getting anywhere. And like I said, it may be a good thing. I'm not knocking it as far as being a good thing and even a right thing. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking strictly from the perspective of he's got to show that the Republicans are there trying to drive logical, meaningful legislation through for the American people.
It's funny, Larry.
And that one just doesn't ring the bell.
Yeah, NPR has even reported that anti-tobacco advocates question McConnell's plan to raise the minimum age. I don't understand why anti-tobacco people would question this, but people can read that. It's so twisted, the path to anything, like why people are motivated to do things and how they go about doing them. It's just never direct at all. Another thing I've been hearing about a lot is these e-cigarettes and vaping. There's an article here that Altria is buying 35% stake. I guess is Altria the new name for R.J. Reynolds or something? So they're buying the vaping company. That's interesting. I feel like vaping's probably even worse for you than cigarettes.
Right. But you see, the one thing McConnell's doing wrong that I can't believe, but it just shows how wrong-minded they are nowadays. In politics, there's one rule that's absolute. he who offends the least wins always.
Right.
Never forget that, Jason. He who offends the least wins always. Now, you introduce that legislation. It's not going to make big news headlines. It's not this great, wonderful thing for America. But what you just did is you made mad the people that smoke, possibly. Now you've alienated them. So why would you do that in an election season coming?
Well, because it's only people who smoke who are between 18 and 21. Probably adults who smoke would even recognize that that's probably an okay thing to not. Because listen, there's probably a lot of smokers, maybe your age, who look back and say, oh, I started smoking when I was like 17 or 18, and if I hadn't, maybe blah, blah, blah. Who knows what people might. But I get where you're coming from. It is a strange thing for him to do.
So the point to all of this is, the election year of 2020 is going to be one of the most unique in our history. Today in America, typically in America, it's 40-40-20, all right? Formula of all life in politics, 40-40-20.
Right.
40% love you if you're giving away gold bricks. 40% hate you even though you're giving away gold bricks. 20% are in the middle and don't care. That's the way it always is.
Right.
This time, not so much. Because of President Trump, you've got some relative number of half of the public likes him, and the other half hate him. And there's not much in the middle now. So this race is all contingent upon each base dealing with their hard base and their soft base. The hard base are the people for Trump in this example. The hard base are people that if it's snowing, there's earthquakes, no matter what happens, they're going to go vote for Trump. The soft base are the people that would vote for Trump if they go vote. But many things can keep them from it. And the other thing you worry about is if they feel like he's not going to win, they're not going to waste their time.
Right.
If they feel he's going to win in a landslide, they're not going to waste their time because he doesn't need their vote.
Right.
So it's all about that 60% of each party's base getting out to vote. What can you do to make that happen? And what I have sold them on, and I think I'm right, every presidential candidate up until this Wednesday, when supposedly, what's his name's coming in the race? Joe Biden.
Oh, really?
Every candidate, tomorrow he's supposed to come and announce with a video that he's in the race.
Huh. I hope he's groping somebody in that video.
Right. He'll be the first candidate in the Democratic group. So far, I don't think he is. I mean, he has not acknowledged himself to be basically a democratic socialist. He's running against, he's not saying he's one of them. Everybody else is fairly well not afraid to represent themselves as democratic socialists. The good news about the 60% of Trump's base is generally it's older. Generally, Trump has the older, more conservative group. The older people fear, justifiably, socialism and communism. We know in our lives, that's right, we know it's bad.
Right.
The millennial generation, on the other hand, they've been so socially engineered from the minute they got into school until they left.
Right.
They're about halfway thinking socialism's a great thing.
I think
even
more than
staring
halfway.
down Venezuela. Yeah. So Trump and McConnell did it a couple of weeks ago. He came out publicly and acknowledged that he was going to have his senatorial candidates say we're going to focus on socialism. Anti-socialism.
Anti-socialism.
That's a winner.
Yeah.
That's a winner.
But do I understand,
no
Larry, that you're saying Joe Biden is going to kind of position himself as an old school Democrat, not a socialist?
Yes. That's what I think he's going to do. I could be wrong. We'll find out
Well, but
tomorrow.
that would be a pretty strong position because there's a lot of people who want that.
Well, it would be unless the millennial element is stronger, or is strong enough, I should say, strong enough now to literally, outdo the old guard Democrats. I don't know. I don't know. That's what Pelosi's having a problem with. That's why she's so scared of AOC.
Right.
Pelosi's hanging on to trying to hold the Democrats in the House together. But the AOC type caucus is growing, and she's losing it.
Right.
And it's funny, there's a sort of a sentiment, it seems, in the Democratic Party from the millennial group that they want younger, more progressive people, right? But then leading the pack right now is Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Go fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of positioning Bernie. I mean, we've seen Bernie hanging out with AOC a lot, and that's they might as well, if he doesn't win for president, they could start a new Odd Couple show and have the two of them live in an apartment together.
I think it's really clear to people like you and I that socialism's coming. I mean, socialism's on the table now.
Right.
Do we want it or do we not?
Right.
And the question is there enough of the baby boomer generation left that will vote to stop it? Because in 4 more years from 2020, from 2020 to 2024, 20% or better of the baby boomers will have died off. It'll be a smaller group. By comparison, the millennial group will grow that much or more with more people coming in to the voting group. So this is probably the last stand for the baby boomers. And the question is, are there enough of us now to stop it?
It's a pretty scary prospect, Larry, socialism in America, but I think you're right. They've done a remarkable job of social engineering everybody to think it's somehow a good thing. And the more I learn about the Weather Underground and the radical Marxists and the Alinskyeites and the community organizers in Chicago, the more I agree with what you're saying, that it's a dangerous ideology that we don't want anything to do with. We are just about out of time, but I want to remind everybody again to go and visit nicholslive.com, and you can read Larry's scripts on there. You're going to find the phone numbers for your various representatives and congresspeople. Click on the donate button and send Larry some money through PayPal. You can get his PayPal address, which is nicholslive@aol.com, and you can send him a financial contribution, some support there on PayPal, or you can put some money in an envelope and mail it to him in Conway, Arkansas. Larry, how's the Patreon page going? Are you able to get that going?
Not yet.
Oh, we got to get on the phone, and I'll help you do that. I got to help you get that set up. Because people who are watching us right now can support Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Become a monthly sponsor. You're going to get access to lots of great exclusive shows, and you're going to support the whole entire effort. I want to thank Larry for joining me again. Larry's great insights as usual. I love hearing the stories about Kenneth Starr. We'll keep our eyes on what's going to happen as the Democrats in Congress continue to march toward impeachment.
That'll work. We'll do it, buddy.
All right, Larry. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Sounds good.